Welcome to The Call to Create. I'm Betsy Bush. I love talking to people whose career and retirement lives seem to come from totally different ends of the universe. So it's going to be so interesting to talk to Deborah Pilla, I should say Dr. Deborah Pilla, how she went from a long career as a pediatric dentist to spending much of her time in retirement sharing the treasures of the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a school programs guide and a docent, all the while creating art of her own. Deborah, I am so happy to have you on The Call to Create. Your story just fascinates me. Thanks for being with me today.
Well, of course, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to share my story as well.
Oh, great. Now, maybe I'm presuming too much that the world of dentistry and the world of art have nothing in common, and I'm kind of wondering what brought you to spend so much time in the museum and the art world and learning about art and doing your own art.
Well, you're absolutely right. It has nothing in common. The only thing I could say is working with your hands in very detailed way does give you a very good sense of eye-hand coordination, maybe perspective and depth. So if I was going to attempt art myself, I had those skills, although I have not really been a very renowned artist in any way. But I think, as many people who are in science or medicine or dentistry, and you're focusing on such a narrow aspect of science, we all kind of have our love for the arts that isn't maybe part of our regular occupation, but we keep it alive in our lives as a balance.
I would imagine that, I don't know, being in an artist, a dentist's office all day, do you think about the art you've seen or the music? Does that offer some kind of mental relief somehow?
Well, I think when you're at your office, you are totally consumed by what you're doing. I also worked in a hospital a lot, in an operating room a lot. So no, I'm totally consumed by what I'm doing. But when I'm finally on my off time, I would certainly always go to the theater, always go to a museum. It just seemed that art is very, very, what can I say, calming and helps you to reset. And I think, at least I have found, and many, that especially during these difficult times in our world, art seems to be the kind of like the even keel that can reset us to feeling happy and calm about the world.
Art really also allows us to reflect on history and the course of human events. I'm looking over your shoulder at this. Is that a photograph or a watercolor of one of an ancient Egyptian temple, perhaps, right over your shoulder? I mean, what more to give you perspective of
Exactly.
the course of humanity than
Yes,
art, right?
It is indeed a copy, of course, of a very old watercolor that was made maybe in the 1800s when people were visiting Egypt and discovering things. But Egypt is very close to my heart because at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I do a tour of ancient Egyptian art, and it's probably my favorite tour there.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have to talk about your work as a docent at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Explain what a docent is.
Okay, I would love to. So a docent is old Latin word that refers to professor. And so a docent is really not just a tour guide, who's, walking you through, here's this gallery and here's this gallery, but really has knowledge of the works of art that they're showing. And I don't know if you'd like to know about the protocol for how you become a docent.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so becoming a docent at the Metropolitan Museum is a very long and difficult process. First, you have to apply, and of course, write basically an essay of why you want to do this job. And if they enjoy your application and essay, then you get a phone interview. And then after the phone interview, you go to the museum, and there's a conference room of about 5 people who interview you.
Wow.
And actually show you images of art, which of course I didn't know, but you were just supposed to say how you felt about them or what it meant to you. And so then after that, you're accepted into a class. And the docent class training is 1 year. And during that year, it is amazing because you have curators at the Metropolitan Museum of Art who are probably the best in the world as in their specialty, giving you lectures.
Wow. It sounds like graduate school.
It is like graduate school. And then what happens is during this year process, you get to create one tour. And it's so interesting the way they do it. The tour is called Exploring Art. So it's art all over the museum, and it's supposed to almost be like a tasting menu of art made out of different materials, art from different cultures, and art from different times, set in different times of world history. But guess what? They don't tell you what to do. You go through the museum yourself, and you select 6 works of art that appeal to you, and you submit them to education, and write a paragraph on basically why you selected them. Once that's approved, then it's up to you to research each of your works of art. Now, what you might not know about the Metropolitan Museum of Art is we have a tremendous library of stacks of books in the basement, but we also have tremendous online sources. And so then you go about researching your 6 works of art, and each work of art is almost kind of like a mini research paper with key facts, with key ideas, focused facts, bibliographies. So then you submit those all to education. And they are reviewed and returned to you. And then you have to make revisions.
Wow, it is like college.
Yes. And then once that's all done, there is a oral presentation component called your audit, where you have to present your tour, your 6 works of art and your tour, to basically 3 people in the education department. And then you find out if you pass.
Wow.
If you don't, you do get another chance, but usually 2 strikes, you're out. And then you can give 1 tour.
Wow.
After that.
Wow. One tour with the 6 works of art that you choose?
Correct. That's after your first year. Now, presently, I give 6 or 7 tours. So I have continued on. I started in 2017, every year adding 1 to 2 tours in different collections.
That's amazing. How many docents does the museum have, and how many people make it through that very rigorous program?
I'm going to say in my class of 24, we might have lost maybe 5 all along the way, from the very beginning when you go, oh no, I don't want to do all this work, to I can't do this research, to I can't talk in front of people. So we do lose people, and often it's there's a complaint, why is it so hard? But really education comes back and says, this is the Met.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the best museums in the world. And yes, we have a really high standard of what we want.
And this is a volunteer program, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You are not paid for this at all.
So you must really want to do it. It sounds absolutely amazing. Well, you're getting a college education, a graduate school
Right.
education.
The people who do it are the most dedicated people I have ever met in terms of studying and writing and meeting and discussing. It's mind-boggling, really. But many of them are retired professionals, retired lawyers, prosecutors, journalists, scientists, doctors. So all of them, I think, wanted to continue with learning and thinking and studying.
So if you're doing, you've added to your tours, now you've done 6 or 7 tours. Do each of those tours have 6 works of art?
Correct.
So now you're an expert on 36 or 42 pieces of art.
Always adding,
yeah.
always adding, because there's something new, there's something fabulous, there's new scholarship. Yes.
So tell me what your favorite tour is, or some of your favorite works, and maybe, something that you can describe that people might know.
Well, as I said, I really love the Egyptian collection at the Met because it is the world's best collection outside of Europe. We have a really celebrity wing there with the Temple of Dendur,
Yes.
which is an entire Egyptian temple that was moved from the Nile in a fabulous glassed-in atrium where the museum is displaying it with water around it as if it was on the Nile.
It is amazing, yes.
It is amazing. Mm-hmm. And also in the Egyptian collection, we have many, many amazing painted coffins and real human remains, which are mummies that we have there too. But the amount of the beautiful artwork that all has to do with the afterlife and the pharaoh is just amazing.
I think the interesting thing about the Egyptian art is how steady it was for thousands of years. It seemed to have changed very little, although maybe as someone, a specialist, maybe you see changes or evolutions in the style of Egyptian art.
Well, Betsy, you are very, very acute to this detail because for thousands of years, the Egyptians believed in the same thing, which was getting to the afterlife. So even though, you start at the old kingdom and go to the middle kingdom and the new kingdom, and thousands of years go by with different pharaohs, and maybe some styles have changed here and there, it's really all about the same thing.
Are there any paintings in other collections? We think about the Met with their gorgeous Impressionist collection. Every single amazing picture you've ever thought of seems to be there,
So Impressionism, we have Manet's, Monet's, Van Gogh's, Cezanne, everything you could think of. But what I ended up getting certified for last spring was the European Art Collection, which had been closed for 4 years for renovation. And when it opened with 800 works of art. That's not including Impressionism at all, or modern or contemporary. It's basically European art, 1300 to 1900. And we have Raphael's and Rembrandt's, but there is one particular painting in there that is just my go-to favorite, and it is a painting that was done in France in the late 1700s, right as the revolution was percolating. And a very famous couple, wealthy aristocratic couple, the Lavoisiers, had their double portrait painted by Jacques Louis David. And it is a amazingly huge painting in a neoclassical style, which means it is not flowery. It's very symmetric. It's very statuesque almost, and you cannot even see a brush strokes. But it looks like a photograph. And I love this painting so not only because of the style and how amazing this couple looks, but it is giving us a window into their lives right before the revolution, and their lives were basically decimated very soon after the painting was made.
Wow.
So the part of art history too, not just the beauty, but the history behind the paintings is amazing.
As a pediatric dentist, you worked with children a lot, and you also have worked as a school guide at the museum. Tell me what that was like. Would have been very different, I would think, than.
Well, you would think, but no. So I'm going to tell you why. So I practiced pediatric dentistry for 33 years. When I began, we didn't have, television sets on the ceiling or what do you call it there? A little games they could play on their phone.
All the little distractions that.
Right, all the distractions. So basically, during the beginning of my practice, or probably a good 10 or 15 years, I had to entertain these children while I was literally giving them Novocaine, doing a root canal. And so many of I had many stories.
Yeah, I bet.
To entertain them, to talk, keep them talking, keep them distracted. So I was very comfortable and used to talking to children. Many of my colleagues weren't. They were like, oh gosh, kids are coming today? Like, ah! But so since I came with the love of talking to kids, now I have a group of children, and their teacher made the school trip. So they're not like necessarily really interested in what we're going to present, but telling the story and building up and getting them interested. And my goal is, like, each tour is to let, even if there's only one or two kids in the group, have that aha moment where their eyes just open and they say, this is awesome, or I've had kids say, this blew my mind, or just that world of wonder, especially some have never even been to a museum. It is really, really fulfilling.
Oh, that's great. What sorts of things do they like to see? I would imagine the Egyptian gallery is pretty popular.
They love Egyptian. They love armor. We have a whole gallery on Renaissance armor. That's always a big hit. Let's see. They, depending on the age, we do from 4th grade to 12th grade too. There's a wonderful Islamic gallery that I do. And if you could imagine, we have all sorts of schools come for that tour, from Christian schools to Jewish schools to the United Nations. And it is such a pleasure to be able to teach children in this day and age about the beauty of Islamic lands, because that is not what they hear about or see today.
Yeah. And I'm familiar with that gallery, and it is spectacular.
Yes.
And eye-opening, as you say, because when you go there, you see the beautiful temples, and we all know, the rugs and the tile work and things like that. But to see it in a museum, this is really worthwhile. I love that. Deborah, we met last summer when we were both taking a mixed media workshop at an art center where we spend some of our summer days. Tell me about your art practice and when did you start creating your own art?
Yeah, so we did meet this summer, and uh, for the last 20 or so summers, I have been going to that vacation area and always taking a course at the local artists association. So over 20 years, I've dabbled in watercolor to clay to drawings to printmaking. I tried everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized along the way that I was never going to be a very proficient artist. But I loved color and I loved creating and the feeling of just making something from your own brain through your own hands. But I never went into it with, oh my gosh, I'm going to hang this on my wall.
Mm-hmm.
I went into it as this is my pleasure. This is for my enjoyment. And never presuming that anything would come of it, but just my own enjoyment of it. And it was so freeing and relaxing doing that. And this summer we met doing, as you said, mixed media, which I call collage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And I kind of remember the teacher going around
Yeah.
the class and why are you here? Why are you here? And some people were saying, well, I'm a collage artist and I'm going to be, this is going to be part of my portfolio to, people who are been proficient artists at other things. And then they come to me and I'm like, I'm just here to have fun. And maybe that's why we connected so well, because it was just so freeing every day to come to there and create things.
I love what you're saying because to me, it's all about the process. It's not about having a product at the end that you're going to hang on your wall or that someone's going to buy at an auction or hang in the gallery space. It's the process that I find so important. I loved what you said about making things with your hands, the brain-hand connection. As someone who worked as a dentist for so long, the brain-hand thing must be really important to you.
It is. It's almost like meditative, if I could say, when I'm, working with my hands and doing something. I feel like my brain goes to a different consciousness of just being relaxed and not a lot of other thoughts bombarding me. I'm just doing this art now. I did do knitting for years, and knitting was also one of these things. I love texture and color, and knitting is one of those things where it's totally mind hand connection, but very meditative as well.
Interesting. I wonder about the fact that so many people don't do anything with their hands anymore. A lot of people don't even cook, but you think back to our grandparents, they were repairing the car or they were sewing or they were mending something and you had to work within the constraints of your materials and your time and stuff like that. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on something like that.
Well, I really do because in terms of my hands and dentistry, I ended up having 5 surgeries on my hands because of the wear and tear from doing dentistry. And I had carpal tunnel and little things, but I also had very serious operations on my hands. And I could have easily just said, that's it. I'm not going to go through all these operations. I'm just not going to do anything anymore. But to me, it was so important for me to be able to still create and work with my hands in a way that they weren't in pain and they had strength.
Hmm.
And I think it's a shame if people get defeated by physical restraints.
Yeah.
Modern medicine can take us to a lot of places, and also the art. In terms of art, so many people say, "Well, I can't. I'm not going to take that class because." I'm not good at this and I'm never going to get an oil painting that I could show people. So many people have that attitude. And, or, oh my gosh, I'm taking this class and wait till my family sees I didn't create anything of any substance.
Oh,
And I feel bad that
I know.
people have these, you know, stops up for themselves.
Yeah, I hear the word I hear a lot when I talk about any kind of creative endeavor is fear. People are afraid. I had someone tell me, I'm afraid of, if I had a blank canvas in front of me, I'm afraid I'd mess it up, you know?
Exactly.
Or it's like, if you mess it up, get another canvas. They're not expensive, or you paint over it and you start again. But it's the sort of thing where if your child said this to you, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up, would you even tolerate that? Just keep going. You got to
Of
try. And you have to
course.
give yourself the self-talk as if you were 7 or 8, don't give up. You've got to keep going, you know.
And I even did that for the Met. Like I got accepted, and when we started, there was a point where I was overwhelmed, and I was like, I'm not doing well at this. Um, my research papers have red marks all over them, and the curator is telling me I'm not seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing, and but what I said to myself is, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try as much as I can. And if it doesn't work out, well, there's always something else. So I never, let the fear, overtake me uh, for very long.
Well, I'm glad, and I love hearing you're saying this, and I hope listeners will say I should try something that I'm afraid of. I mean, first of all, what's the worst that can happen? It's
What's
not
the
like
worst
you're
that can
skydiving,
happen?
right? Right,
Yeah.
right. Um, and you are now also embarking on a kind of a new project, if I understand right. Do you want to tell me about that? It's not painting.
No. So I was telling you how I always told stories to children. And in during the summer, in on the beach, I would have my own children, plus friends' children, plus my nieces and my nephews. And I would always tell at evening time a story that I'd made up. And it became one story, and it had a couple chapters. So each night someone was staying overnight, we would tell the next chapter. And this past summer, my niece, who's now grown up and has her own children that I'm telling the story to, she said, Aunt Debbie, if you don't write this down, no one's going to remember it. No one's going to know about it. And so, yes, indeed, this summer, I began to write the chapters down of the children's story that I have told for years. Now, I am not writing it to publish it or to become famous. I'm writing it for my friends and family, but I don't know where it will go. Wherever it goes
Mhm.
will be great.
Well, I interviewed Graham Broyd on The Call to Create a couple weeks ago, and he started with the same thing. He started writing down the stories of his travels as a 20-year-old from the UK and the US. And before he knew it, now he's having it professionally published. But that doesn't have to happen. And if it's for your own family and for your own satisfaction, that's enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wonderful that, you sit down and you have your time slotted out and you say, I'm going to write now. And it's really, sometimes it's difficult, but sometimes I just go on and on and on, and I'm really fluid with it. So it's a very enjoyable process to see what that's all about. How do writers work, and I've enjoyed that too.
Are you going to illustrate it?
So this is very interesting. I am
Uh-oh.
certainly not a good enough artist to illustrate it myself. It would be just stick figures. And then I thought, well, perhaps I could hire some kind of young artist to make me some sketches. And then, of course, this young woman who is very, very, uh, I should say she actually works for AI company,
Mhm.
creating the content that you and I would use if we wanted illustrations.
Mm.
So she came over to my house one day and she sat down with me and literally showed me how AI could create illustrations for my book exactly the way I wanted them.
Oh my goodness. Is that
And
scary to you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So it's actually was really fun and creative. And at first I'm like saying to her, but this isn't right. This isn't real. She goes, yes, it is real because we have thousands and thousands of artists who put these images into AI and created this for you. So artists have done this. But uh, it's still a little daunting to
Mm.
think about it.
Yeah.
But it was really a fun process to see how the whole new generation is writing
Hmm.
and creating illustrations.
Wow. Wow. Deborah, this has been a fantastic conversation, absolutely wonderful. And I'm wondering if you have words of encouragement to anyone who might be listening in and thinking, wow, there are so many places this conversation could take me. Maybe they can't be a docent at the Met, but maybe there's a museum nearby in their own area, or maybe they should be taking up their artist paintbrushes and that sort of thing? Or what do you say? How did you get started, and what was the self-talk involved in getting started?
Well, I was still working, but I knew I was going to retire in a year. And I think, like everyone out there, you're a little daunted about what am I going to do? Um, and I began to start investigating that while I was winding down, actually. So I wasn't as afraid of retirement coming because there were some ideas of what I could do. So one of the things is, I think if you're heading to retirement, I know some people say, well, wait 2 years when you're retired and you'll find yourself. I wasn't that person. I did research while I was on my way to retirement, and I think it made it a transition with less anxiety,
Hmm.
knowing how many things were out there.
Wow.
And like you say, for your local museum, there are so many um, programs you could take just on lectures,
Hmm.
exhibits. You could come have a tour with a docent. You could, there's all sorts of open drawing and paintings. And again, I think the key is you, in this point in your life, you are doing it for yourself, for your pleasure. And I think we all deserve that at this point, especially after
Absolutely.
we've worked a long, hard life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Deborah, this has been so inspiring, and I so appreciate your sharing your experience with the docent world. Wow. I'm I don't know if I would take it on, but it sounds like it could be absolutely fantastic, and what a rewarding experience and everything. And I look forward to seeing you this summer, maybe on the beach, plein air, painting or something like that. That would be a lot of fun.
That would be wonderful. And the same here. It was been a pleasure to meet you and discuss all these ideas and thoughts that are just so important to all of us at this point in our lives.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.